This episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast is brought to you by Equipment Defender. Check out the racks that stop theft in its tracks. With trimmer racks available in 2, 3, and 4 trimmer configurations, backpack blower racks that fit any size, make, and model of backpack blower, and many other racks available for the tools and equipment needed for your lawn care or landscaping business. Go check them out at lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/Equipment Defender. You're listening to the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast, the weekly show sharing proven methods and systems in marketing, equipment, and customer service, educational and motivational, to help make your lawn care business an overwhelming success. Now here's your host, Julio Tomei. Welcome, Lawn Care Nation, to another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Julio Tomei, and this is episode number 120, entitled, You Can't Please Everyone, But Why You Should Still Try. Well, hello, everyone, and thanks again for joining me this week on another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. I really appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week and downloading those episodes. I also appreciate the questions, comments, and feedback that have been going through, and of course, especially the iTunes reviews that some of you guys have been so kind enough to take time out in your day and leave me some of those. And this week, I've got another review that I'd like to read you guys. And this one was left by somebody named Nathan J916. Now, if you remember last week's episode, with the question that came in from JC, the lawn care guy. And I also read out a email that I got from somebody who was also named Nathan. So I'm not sure if this is the same Nathan that left me the review. It sort of sounds like it by this review. So if it is, thank you very much, Nathan, for sending in both, your comments by email and also leaving an iTunes review. I really do appreciate it. So anyways, Nathan goes on to say his review title says, Great and Informative Podcast. So he says, thank you for all your time and that you put into this podcast each week. I am a new listener, and this podcast was so great, I listened to every episode from the beginning. What I like most about Julio is he truly cares about all his listeners and has their best interests at heart. He is a man of honesty and integrity. He makes every podcast important because he knows you, the listener, are relying on him to bring sound, honest advice that he himself has been through. This is not fluff. He tells it how it is. Both his interview episodes and solo episodes are full of useful information. Please keep up the good work. The reason I started listening to Julio and because he was because he was still putting up episodes. So keep them coming, please. So again, like I said, thank you very much, Nathan, for leaving a review on iTunes. So if you would like to leave a review just like Nathan did, you can head on over to the website at lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/reviews. There I have this sort of aggregated list of all the worldwide reviews that you can read through. And there's also a link there that'll take you through to iTunes where you can leave your reviews. And like I say, I would really appreciate, it's probably the single most important thing you can do to help get the word out about the podcast. It just gives the show that social proof that you guys really do find the episodes to be valuable to you. And just helps new people that are looking for things to listen to, like Nathan did, will stumble upon it and probably read some reviews and are more enticed to give the podcast a listen if there is that sort of social proof behind it. On another note, I wanted to briefly talk about, my sort of monetization efforts behind the podcast. I think I mentioned last week how GIE is coming up, and unfortunately I will be unable to attend this year for financial reasons. Just the cost that it is to fly from here on the west coast of Canada out there to GIE is just, for that short period of time, the 2-3 days, it's just, not doable at this time. So like I think I mentioned, My goal here now is to try to start making the GIE a regular thing that I can go to on a yearly basis starting in 2018. But the only caveat there is that this podcast that I've put so much time and effort into for the last 2 years is going to have to pay the way. So, so just trying to think of monetization strategies and stuff going forward. If I can generate some income from the podcast, I've always been upfront and honest with you guys as far as anything like that goes, as far as any sort of, product reviews I've done and anything like that, using links and things like that for me after, is all sort of, the affiliate link strategy and all that sort of stuff. So going forward, I'm going to continue that. So, any of the affiliate links that you guys see on the website, whether it's, or that you hear through the podcast, whether it's, the Equipment Defenders, or Amazon links, through the YouTube videos and on the website and on the resources page of my website, there's a whole bunch of, affiliate links there that, are all things that I've used or tried and approve of. If you guys would like to support the show, like to support my efforts to get to GIE for next year, it's a great way to do that. I'd really appreciate that. There's other ones like the Bluehost and stuff if you're looking to start a website for your lawn care company. The Audible ones that you hear through the podcast announcements, all that stuff, signing up for those free trials and things like that, that all helps contribute. And like I say, I would really appreciate you guys continuing to use that, like I say, get me to GIE so I can meet a bunch of you guys next year. This week, I'd like to talk about another user suggestion, and this one came in on let me see here. This one came in on my Instagram account. So this one was from an Instagram user, and they direct messaged me. And were commenting on the recent episode of the podcast, saying that they really enjoyed it. That was another good episode. And they said that they had just lost a customer. He says, because he came across really cool and relaxed. So I pushed off an aeration job that I was supposed to do on Saturday and told the person that they were going to get to it. And the person kind of exploded, and dropped this company. He said, anyway, I think an interesting topic might be some of the most common things or common ways that people lose accounts. So obviously, if we're going to talk about some of the common ways, it's hard to say. There's so many different reasons. Obviously, poor customer service. When I'm talking to a customer for the first time, I always ask if they've had a lawn service before, and if they did, what made them want to change. And a lot of the reasons are usually the same. It's always, the person wasn't reliable, the person never showed up. I have one that I picked up this week along those lines, where 2 weeks ago they called asking me to come and mow their lawn, just a one-time thing. And I thought, I'm not really into the one-time mowings. It's just not profitable enough, because by the time you go there, you're doing a quote at the same time. You're spending so much time sort of wooing the customer, that, by the time you get, with these little city lots and stuff that I'm working in, if it's a $30 mow and all that sort of stuff, by the time you actually do the mow and stuff, you haven't really made any money, because the amount of time you've spent there, that first lawn mowing is kind of a write-off because of that amount of time that it takes to talk to that customer. And usually you're making profit over the extended range, over that long range of servicing that customer over and over and over again. But in this case, you know what, it was just a couple blocks away. So I was like, you know what, I'll go have a look at it. No big deal. And the person was having, I think a barbecue or something on the weekend. This was like a Friday that they were calling, of course. Looking if we could come and mow their lawn because their lawn guy hadn't shown up and wasn't returning calls. So I went and had a look at it, and yes, it was a bit overgrown and stuff, but it was, you know, coming off the summer. So it was a bit overgrown, but it wasn't crazy like a spring, you know, when it's really, really, crazy growth in the spring. So I gave them a price and, mowed the lawn, and, they paid me. And, you know, they said, they asked me how much it would be ongoing if I, you know, were to come back. Cause they said, you know, they don't know if their guy is sick. They seemed loyal to their lawn care guy and said, you know, we haven't heard from him. I don't know if something happened in the family. I don't know. He hasn't returned the calls and stuff. So we'd like to sort of wait out a little bit longer and give him a chance to, you know, come back and sort of explain his disappearance sort of thing and thing, but we'll keep you in mind if we can't get a hold of him. So I said, okay, well, at least there's that glimmer of hope there, right? That, yes, I'm not really making too much money on this first one, but we'll see what the, you know, if it pans out. So lo and behold, a couple weeks have passed, and this past week, you know, the customer calls again and says, yeah, you know what, he still hasn't called. The lawn needs to be mowed again. You know, we're into September here, and now it's it's growing pretty rapidly. So we'd like you to take over. So great. So, you know, I scheduled them into the day, and I went down there and mowed the lawn, sold them on fertilizer services and aerations and all that stuff too. So now they're on an ongoing agreement for that, where I can just go ahead and do whatever the lawn needs for their home. But again, a case of their last provider just didn't show up. He just stopped coming. So I'm assuming he, you know, got paid for his last efforts, maybe ended 1 month or whatever, and for whatever reason doesn't want to come back. Or, you know, maybe something truly did happen where the person, you know, is sick, or, you know, for whatever, who knows, right? It'd be impossible to sort of figure out what would cause this person not to show up. So anyways, like I said, just one of the most common reasons that I find is just the unreliability of a current provider. You know, in the summertime, one of the complaints that I get as well when I'm talking to a new client is that their last guy, again, you know, it's too hot. He doesn't want to show up. Or, you know, they don't know when the guy, he wasn't regular. So, you know, I've had this complaint a bit as well from clients when I'm asking them about their past service providers, you know, they don't know when he's going to show up. There was never a set day. They didn't have like a Tuesday mow or a Wednesday mow. It was the guy would just show up whenever. And sometimes it would be once a week. Sometimes it would go 3 weeks by the time the guy would come back. And, you know, they felt neglected. They felt that their lawn was not a priority to this guy. And I, you know, had that as well. You know, they said, I know he does commercial stuff and all that stuff. So he's obviously, you know, busy with that and doesn't want, you know, to take care of ours. But then, you know, I had even one customer say, well, you know, maybe he should not even do residentials then, because, you know, here we are, our lawn is looking, you know, shabby and stuff. And, you know, he keeps saying that he'll get to it, you know, thing, and then he just keeps pushing it back. And I always joke with the customer that, well, you won't get that with me. The number one thing, you know, you'll find with me is the reliability. I will be here every week on the day that I tell you. So if you're a Tuesday cut or a Wednesday cut, then you know that I'm here every Wednesday. And it's also something that I use when I'm talking about credit card payments for those customers as well, is that sort of to ease their mind, because a lot of people can be uneasy with giving somebody a credit card that, you know, a person that they've just met, giving them their credit card number. But I sort of ease their mind in the fact that I'll tell them, you know, one of the things with me, you know, with the credit cards and stuff like that is, you know, say that I bill you once a month at the end of the month and stuff. And unless, you know, right now I put you down for, and this is just an example, like if the person just wants mowing and they don't want fertilizing or anything, they're strictly a mowing only client, I'll tell them, you know, if, you know, for right now, I only charge to your credit card what you have authorized. So for right now, that's just mowing. If I see anything else that needs to be done on the property, I will of course let you know and give you a price on that. And if you tell me to go ahead, then I'll go ahead. If you don't, then it doesn't get done. So, you know, you're billed once a month, and you know, it's pretty easy to figure out. Obviously, if you're just on mowing, then, you know, you're getting 4 mows a month and stuff. So you sort of know what to expect on your credit card each and every month. So I sort of use that same sort of train of thought with the credit cards as well as with the mowing sort of side of it. But those are some of the common complaints that I have heard over the years. Now, of course, there is, you know, a bunch of other reasons that clients will let you go. And for example, one client, so I'll give you some examples of, you know, some of the clients in the past that have let me go for various reasons. Now, let me start off by saying that, you know, you're not going to please everyone, just like the title of this podcast episode goes, but that you should always try. And that, you know, there's going to be some times where it's just out of your control. People will think about the state of the world today that we live in. And actually, you know, it probably doesn't matter that it's today. You could probably go back, you know, 50 years or 100 years, and it's still probably a lot of the same things apply. There's going to be times when somebody doesn't like you for whatever reason. It might be the way you look. It might be your skin color. It might be your vehicle. It might be your company logo. There's certain things. Now think to yourself of times where you have hired or looked for a company yourself, and think about those triggers of, you know, and obviously, you know, this is not like a direct feedback and stuff, so you don't have to be shy about thinking this to yourself, but be honest with yourself and think about times where you may have not hired somebody or chose something, whether it was, say, a cashier line at a store, and you went to a different line because you just didn't like the way that cashier looked, for example. This is just something, you know, off the top of my head. So there's things that are programmed, and of course it shouldn't be that way. You should be obviously welcoming and loving of everybody that you encounter, but we're programmed. And like I said, there's different things, different things that can set different people off. So some, you know, in your business, you will find that there will be times when you are rejected because of somebody's perception of who you are. And there's just nothing that you can do to change that. In the case of somebody who's, say, racist, for example, if they call you up and they don't know what you look like, and, you show up to their property, you may not even get that job in the beginning because of your skin color. And, that sort of stuff can happen. And also, over time, your mannerisms, the way you talk, the way you do a certain thing, maybe the way you cut the lawn. Maybe you cut it too fast. I've heard that too. That, the last lawn care company, they cut the lawn too fast. They were in and out so quick. And, they're just not doing a good job. You could be doing a fantastic job. You could be so efficient at everything you do, the mowing, the trimming, the edging, and all that stuff. But in the customer's mind, you're not doing a good job because you do it too fast. They think about how long it took them or takes them to mow the lawn, and say it takes them 45 minutes to mow the lawn, but you bang it off in 15 or 20 minutes because you've got more efficient machines. You do this on a daily basis. To them, they're going to be like, that's too fast. He's not spending enough time. He's not doing a good job because he's just blowing through it. And, there's so many different reasons why a potential customer or a customer that has already hired you can let you go after you've already done, you're doing the best that you can do up to that point. But in their mind, it's just not good enough for whatever reason. So one thing to think about in this respect is to think back to the clients that you do. Now, this is what I do. For, in the past, when I have lost a customer for whatever reason, I'll think, like, am I doing something wrong? Like they're whatever, they may be telling me exactly that I'm not doing a good job or something like that. And I'll think to myself, okay, I've had this customer for 6 months, for example, and they're not happy with my service. So should I be, but I'm, thinking to myself, but, I'm doing everything I can do. I'm, trimming, the edging is so nice. I'm mowing, I'm reliable. I'm doing credit card payments. I don't have to worry about writing checks, and all that sort of stuff. So I start to think to myself, okay, well, what are my other customers' experiences? Well, I've got customers that I've been servicing for years and years and years. And I'm doing the exact same things with them that I do with this new client. So why do I have the majority of my clients for years, but this new person says there's something wrong, that I'm not doing a good job? So that sort of eases my mind in thinking, okay, well, I know I'm doing the best that I can do. And it's proven because I've got these clients that I've had for years and years and years. So obviously this is a case of a client that you just can't please. No matter what I do, there's some reason that they don't like me. And the best thing to do is just move on. Is not make a stink about it, not make anything, just thank them for their business and move on. And I found that, and just recently this happened, where a client had let me go because they said the neighbor was going to start mowing the lawn. And so I thought, okay, well, that's kind of, kind of strange because you seemingly love me. You're always, talking with me, always telling me how happy you are with everything, but you're going to drop me because a neighbor is now decided to mow some lawns on the side. Okay, that's fine. And at first you think, okay, well, it kind of ticks you off because you're like, man, I like come every week. I'm reliable. All the sort of points that I pointed out there. And yet you're going to drop me just because, your neighbor decided to cut some lawns. And I think, okay, that's fine, but don't come back is what I think in my head. Don't come back and ask me to mow your lawn again or do anything for you again. Because I know the amount of time and effort I put in. And like I say, this recently happened where, a customer dropped me at the beginning of this year because they said the neighbor was going to start mowing their lawn for them. And even though I did tons of work for them and they were super happy, all of a sudden out of the blue when I reached out to them in the spring to say, mowing season is starting again. They sort of, just out of the blue said, the neighbor's going to start mowing it now. Thank you very much for your great service and all that. But the neighbor's going to start mowing it. But lo and behold, they called last week and asked me if I could trim some trees for them, that I did such a great job on those trees last year. And obviously the neighbor mows lawns or mows, a couple lawns in the neighborhood, but he doesn't do any of the tree trimming. He doesn't do any of that other stuff. So, at first, my first reaction was, no, I'm not going to, come trim your tree. You drop me for, even though, I do a great job, you dropped me for your thing. But I started to think about it and said, you know what? It's easy $150 for me to go there for an hour and a half and trim that tree up. So why the heck not? Why let that $150 go to somebody else? So I ended up going there and doing it, and it was an easy $150. So, I trimmed that tree last year. I trimmed it now this year. I'll probably have to trim it next year. And like I say, it's just an easy bit of cash there. So don't get too offended sometimes, because customers will come back at times for certain things. And for whatever reason, no matter how good of a job you're doing, like this customer that I gave you the example of, there will be times when, for whatever reason, that they decide to, go with this other customer now, or go with this other company, or drop you for whatever reason. So I'm just going to break for the podcast announcements, and then I'm going to give you a couple of other past experiences that I've had where things, were seemingly going really well. And then, things went sideways and customers let me go for whatever reason. Hey guys, if you have any questions or comments about the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/contact. And while you're there, why not join my mailing list and get access to a free PDF document of a landscape maintenance contract you can feel free to copy and use in your own business. For you Instagram users out there, be sure to follow me at Lawn Care Business Success. And if you haven't checked out my videos yet, well, what are you waiting for? Be sure to subscribe to the Lawn Care Business Success YouTube channel. Now, I know you guys love listening to audio while you work as much as I do, so I've partnered up with Audible to offer you guys a free 30-day trial and one free audiobook of your choice. There's no long-term commitments, and you can cancel anytime. And get this, even if you cancel during the trial period, you get to keep your free audiobook. It's a great way to try the service and see if Audible is right for you. So why not give it a try? Head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/audible. Now back to the show. Okay, so before the break there, I was talking about, some of the ways and some of the reasons that customers, may drop you as a lawn care service provider, and some of the past experiences that I've had. So I wanted to share another couple of instances where I myself have lost clients over the years because of certain instances. So I had this one client where they were sort of out of the way. They were in a different, this is right around the time where I left the franchise and I decided to, go on my own and start my own brand. And I started servicing clients, and I had a wider pool or a wider area that I would service than just my specific tightly knit neighborhood route that I currently have. So I was, open to calls all over the city because I was building a brand and I had to transition. And when I left the franchise, I essentially, I couldn't service past clients that were part of the franchise. So I had to start from scratch. So I was open to taking work from everywhere. So I was taking work actually from an adjacent city, but where I live is sort of on the fringe or edge of the city that I'm in, and it sort of butts up against, obviously, the next city over. So it may sound like it's far away or not, but it actually isn't. His customer was maybe about a 15-minute drive away. So I was servicing this client, brand new house. It was a mother-daughter living in this house. The husband, father had passed away recently. And, I was doing this lawn. I was mowing it. I did a full lawn renovation for them. They had these big trees. The lawn was struggling to grow properly. So I did the full power rake, aerate, all that stuff for them. The lawn was coming in fantastically. It was growing insanely. And everything was going great until the summer hit. And, in the summer, I was mowing still because the lawn still it was a new lawn. So it was still going good. But there was this particular day when I went to the client's house and I can't remember what I needed to talk to the client about, what instigated me going to the front door to knock on the door. But there was something that I needed to do first, to talk to this client first. So I went to the front door. The lady came out. I literally sat there and had a 10-minute conversation with this lady about whatever we were talking about. Like I say, I can't remember the details now. This is probably going about 6 years ago. So I can't remember the details about what the conversation was about, but I just remember that, I was there for a while talking to her. And this was, I think, mid-month. And then, I mowed one more time the week after, and then it was time to bill them. So I billed them to their credit card. I left the bill at the door, and I get this call from the daughter who says, "You overcharged us. You didn't mow on such and such a day, but you charged us for it." And I said, "Yes, I did." I called her back and I was essentially like, yeah, I did. In fact, that was the day that I had a 10-minute conversation with your mom on the front step before I even started. And I even recounted all of the details of our conversation because it was fresh in my mind still. It had only been about 2 weeks. And, she went in and talked to her mom, and her mom came out and her mom couldn't remember. So obviously she was either suffering from dementia or starting to get early signs of dementia, but she had no recollection of our conversation. And her mom was being very non-confrontational. She was just like, "Okay, I don't care, whatever, that's fine. I'm not going to argue about it. Just, it doesn't matter," sort of thing, right? But the daughter was being like, "No, you said he didn't have talked with you, that he wasn't here that day," and all that stuff. And I was just shaking my head going, is this really happening? Like, I had a talk with this lady. I just recounted all the details. And on top of that, I mowed your lawn and I left because I don't take grass clippings with me and I bag all the lawns. I left, and at this time, you would put grass in yard waste bags, these look like paper lunch bags, but just huge versions of them, and like leaf bags type thing. And you would leave them at the curb for the city to pick up. And their garbage day or pickup day was the next day, right after their mowings. So I left the bags of grass at the front of their driveway to be picked up the next day by the city. And it's like, how can you not know that I didn't mow your lawn? Like, the lawn is growing so much. It got cut, it got bagged, it got put on your driveway. I talked to you before I mowed, and now you're telling me that I wasn't here. Like, I was just floored. I couldn't believe, like, how is this, like, it's so I could understand on a summer lawn that isn't growing, as quickly, that it's hard to tell if it was cut sometimes. You get those that are sort of in that sort of sketchy gray area, but this was completely like, of course I cut the lawn. It's a no-brainer that I cut the lawn. And I talked to you before I even started. So that was one of the cases where then, I was able to continue to mow the lawn for the rest of that season. But essentially they let me go after that. So they, obviously didn't want to look for somebody new sort of, mid-season, because it was like, I guess, getting into September and stuff, at the end of the summer here. And then, they ended up letting me go and, didn't renew, after that, even though I turned their lawn, completely 180 degrees from how it looked before and wasn't growing properly. It was then green and lush and thick. I was mowing it, but because they believed that I didn't mow it that day, that they had no recollection of me being there to mow it, they then didn't trust me. And there's nothing you can do about that. If you mow somebody's lawn and you leave the evidence behind of bags of grass for the city to pick up, and you talk to the homeowner before you're about to start, yet they can't remember any of that and are adamant that you weren't there, there's nothing you can do about it. And so you just move on. And you just shake your head and go, that's like the first time that has ever happened. Another case where I've been let go over time is in a case with dog waste. So dog waste is my, I would say, number one pet peeve. And like, you have to pick it up if I'm going to cut your lawn. I hate cutting lawns that have dog waste in it. I pick up, I've got a dog too. I pick up the dog waste out of my own yard on a weekly basis, all the time. You're constantly out there, it seems. But it's the only way. You can't just leave it. It just builds up. It becomes so hard and pretty dangerous as well, if you think about, hitting dog waste and all that. So it's just, it gets in your boots, it gets on the tires, you're stuck smelling it the rest of the day, you're stuck tracking it into your truck if you don't see that you stepped in it. So I'm pretty adamant about not mowing lawns. Now, sometimes this kind of gets away from me. Sometimes I allow new customers to sort of figure it out. And I'm going through that right now with a customer that I picked up this year. But I'll get into that at the end of this next story. But this particular customer that I had a few years ago had a couple dogs, and it was a pretty small yard. And I think they were, their lawn cutting price was like $30. The problem was all the dog waste. So, and I have a dog waste policy that I let customers know of when I first being hired, that if they don't pick up the dog waste, that, I charge them for the dog waste. And the policy has changed. It's sort of a ever growing thing. It's always morphing and changing. And it may change again this year after my recent experiences here with a current customer. Like I say, I'll get into this story after. But for this particular customer, so at the time I was charging people that if they didn't pick up their dog waste, I would do anything. All I want to do is mow the lawn. I don't want to deal with the dog waste. So I'm trying to do anything I can do to discourage people from leaving the dog waste not picked up so that I don't have to deal with it. So this particular customer, and I think, it was like I was telling them, it's if you don't pick up the dog waste, you get charged, $2 for every pile of dog waste that I find in the yard. Because it takes me a lot longer. I have to, not only can I, start off trimming and stuff, but every time I'm trimming, I got to be watching where I'm stepping. I'm going to be, I have to watch where I'm trimming. It slows down the whole process. And then I go to mow. I have to watch where I'm mowing. I have to adjust my stripes and things so I'm not getting the tires into the dog waste. If the grass is wet, which it is here the majority of the time because it's always raining, if there's clogs in the mower and you just mowed a lawn with dog waste in it, I don't want to be reaching in, even with gloves, I don't want to be reaching in to clear a clog under the deck of my mower that, just went through a yard that had a bunch of dog waste in it. So I was pretty strict about the dog waste. So in this particular case, this client just didn't, I don't know if they were just too busy, or didn't care, but they would never pick up the dog waste. So I just started charging them the $2 a pile, like I said I would. And I wasn't picking it up, but I was just charging them. So this worked for a little bit. It kind of got their attention when they got the first bill. And, there was a couple of good weeks in there where I'd get there and the dog waste would be clean. But then it reverted back to, once the weather sort of turned nasty and rainy, the people wouldn't want to go out there and clean the dog waste. And it sort of, reverted back to being a problem. And so in this particular case, it started getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And by the end of it, I was doing a $30 mow for this customer, and they would have like $45 in dog waste charges each week, in addition to the $30 mow, because I had told them that it was $2 a pile, and they agreed that, that's the case. They never complained about it. But at the end of the season, they let me go. And obviously they didn't tell me why. They just said they weren't renewing services. When I called back to say that, at the end of the year or whatever, to renew for the next year, I knew exactly what it was. It was because it was too expensive that, but to me, it didn't matter because I just don't want to deal with it. I'm not charging you, or charging that customer $45 because I'm trying to rip them off. I'm charging them $45 because I want them to go, holy smokes, he's charging me $45 because I didn't pick up the dog waste. I should start picking up the dog waste. And then I'll only be charged the $30 for mowing, having the lawn mowed. So, it's just one of those things. And in this case, the person's time was either too valuable to be sitting there picking up the dog waste, or they just didn't care, or they just didn't want to do it, and decided to find somebody else who was desperate enough, or maybe, some neighborhood kid or something that would mow the lawn and not complain about the dog waste. So that's another example. So, and that new customer that I said that I would sort of bring into that story is a customer that I picked up this year who, sort of deja vu with this sort of dog waste problem where, I'm always sort of changing and rethinking the strategies with dog waste and discouraging people with it. And in this particular case, I picked up this client. They had a previous service provider who was in a franchise as well, not the same one that I was in, but a different franchise, and completely unreliable. Didn't show up for lengths of time. And that's why they looked for another company. So they found me. The problem is that this one is another one where they've got two medium-sized dogs, a beagle and like a Springer Spaniel or something like that type of a dog. And, they have, here's the issue with this one. They have a dog waste removal service that they've hired that comes to pick up the dog waste. And in this particular case, the guy is scheduled on a Friday to pick up the dog waste. I'm scheduled to mow the lawn on a Thursday because that's when I'm in that neighborhood. So at first, they said they would call the guy and reschedule him to come on the Wednesday. And the first couple weeks, he did show up on the Wednesday. And it was mostly good. Like 90% of the dog waste was picked up. I find that these guys I actually saw the guy there once on a Friday. I was there trimming some trees and bushes, and the guy came in and he's in and out so fast that he's just skimming the property, picking up, the big ones that he sees there on top, and, doesn't really thoroughly do it. Like, when I'm cleaning my home backyard, I'm thoroughly going over the backyard and cleaning it because I don't want to pick up, or I don't want to go over the dog waste with a mower or my boots or things like that. But I find, if these people aren't affected by the mowing part, they're not doing the mowing, they're not dealing with that part of it, they just don't care. So this dog waste service was coming in, they're just going quick. And then it started getting worse and worse again. And that's sort of where I'm at here. And like on that Friday, I see this guy, he came in quick and he said, oh yeah, the owner wanted me to come on Fridays, but I can't do that. I got like 90 customers that I'm dealing with, and going to, I can't reschedule, put somebody on a different schedule, because of the dog waste and stuff like that. He says, it's easier for you to reschedule and sort of thing. Right. And I was thinking in my head, no, it's not. Because I'm in the same boat. I've got my schedule set for the neighborhood. I'm not coming back to this neighborhood for one house another day to fit you. And I think it's more important for the lawn to be clean before it gets mowed than the other way around. For me to mow the lawn and squish all the dog poop and all that stuff into the lawn with the wheels and all that stuff for you to come clean it the next day. So I'm essentially getting the full week worth. So, like I said, the customer has tried to reschedule and stuff. He's made some effort. The customer has gone out there sometimes and tried to pick it up himself when he hears me coming, if he's home. But again, in a case of when the customer does do it, it just doesn't do a good enough job, because he's not mowing and stuff. He's just like, let me get out there, make it look like I'm cleaning up the dog poop and that sort of thing. So, this is another one where it's like, this could go sideways. And I'm starting to rethink my strategy on this one to go. I know a lot of these dog waste companies have 2 tiers of service where they will come in and pick up your dog waste and take it away, or where they just come and take it away, where you do the picking up. The homeowner does the picking up, leaves it in a specific bucket each week. They just drive up, pick up that bucket and leave you a new bucket. And then, the next week the homeowner picks up their own dog waste, leaves it in the bucket, and it's a cheaper service because they're just driving by in their route. So I'm thinking, well, you know what? If this guy doesn't want to adjust his schedule and it's becoming a pain for me, I'm just going to offer to the customer now to do the picking up myself. And that way, there's 2 things. I know that it's going to be thoroughly cleaned, which is also a benefit to the customer because he's not paying for a service that's only doing 80% of the job. I'm going to thoroughly clean it because I know it affects me, it affects my mowers, affects, all sorts of things. And I'll be getting paid the extra to do it. I'm already there anyways to mow the lawn. So why not clean up the dog waste? I'm not going to dispose of it. I'll leave it in the bucket there, and he can hire the same guy that he's using, but just to come and pick it up, take it away, instead of going through the yard and doing sort of a half-assed job at doing it, and me having to deal with all this dog waste every week because the guy comes the day after I'm there to mow. So that's sort of, I know it doesn't relate to the whole part of the story, but I thought I'd sort of throw that in because it's, sort of in that line along those discussions. But the point is, there's just so many different ways that you can lose a client. And as long as you look at yourself and you know that you are doing the best work, this is what it comes down to, doing the best work to your ability, that you are, blowing everything properly. You're not leaving a mess. I did a lawn last week, and across the street, these this is maybe a topic for another time, but I can just see, these people having issues. I go to this neighborhood. It's one of these ones that has the really tight parking. I go, and there's a school up the street, and there's some parking there all the time, usually on the street in front of the school. So I go and pull up there, and I walk down the street with my mower, with my trimmer, and go do this house. And along comes this other landscaping company with a trailer and stuff to service the house across the street. But they pull up, and they decide they're going to back in the driveway with their truck and trailer. And they do, but the thing is, they're sticking out on the road, and they're blocking the sidewalk. Within a few minutes, this elementary school class is walking up the sidewalk on their side of the street. You have a teacher in the front. You have like these 30 little, they look like they were 6 or 7 years old, coming along the sidewalk. And now the teacher is forced to have to cross the middle of the street with no crosswalks with these 30 little, 7-year-olds, because this lawn care company was too lazy to park down the road. And on top of that, this lawn care company had 2 guys. So like, here I am up the road, being, mindful of the fact that I don't want to block sidewalks and stuff because of people, having to do exactly what this guy's doing. Can you imagine if I had parked the way that this guy had parked? And now this elementary school teacher would be completely blocked off of both sidewalks on both sides of the road. So I can just see like another sort of thing here, because not only did this guy sort of he's not being mindful of everybody around him, but also here I am, I'm mowing these lawns, and the leaves are falling and stuff, and I start off by blowing the leaves on the sidewalk onto the lawn so that the lawnmower will pick them up. So here I am, I'm taking these extra steps because it's that time of year, and I finish off these 2 houses, blowing the leaves and everything onto the lawns, doing the edging, the trimming, blowing the leaves that were on the street that fell off the tree onto the lawn as well. And I managed to finish almost finish these 2 houses in the same amount of time that these 2 guys took to do 1 house. And on top of it, they blew all the leaves onto the street. So they're done. They get in their truck, they rip off, and I'm looking at this house, and the lawn was nicely mowed, but the street in front of the house has all this debris, grass and leaves and stuff. And I'm looking at it going, man, how long is it going to be until I start mowing that one? Because when a customer And I've seen the customer there at times. There was actually one time where the parking was available in front of that customer's house, and I parked my truck and trailer in front of that house, walked across the street to do the 2 houses that I do, and then this lawn service came up and there was parking in front of me, so he parked in front of me and then did the house that I was parked in front of. So I know the customer knows who I am because they saw me and saw me service the houses across the street. So it's like, how long is it going to be until they call me? Because look at the mess that this guy's leaving. And if he does that on a weekly basis, and then on top of that, he's blocking the sidewalk and, the elementary thing. If I had done the same thing, this teacher would have been forced to walk on the street with all these little kids. So, just being mindful. There's so many different things that can trip off a customer in not liking what you do. And, parking your truck on their thing. I've had customers ask me or be unsettled by me parking my truck and trailer on their driveway because they think my truck and trailer are too heavy. And even though I've just got a, regular 3/4 ton truck and my landscaping trailer is not that big, but in another case of something that the person was uneasy about, they didn't like me on their driveway because they thought it would cause their driveway to crack if I did that on a weekly basis, that my truck and trailer were too heavy. The way people's minds work are so intricate and involved, and somebody can be set off for so many different reasons. So those are some of the ways that I've seen a repeated pattern. When I always ask clients when I get a new client why they're hiring me and why they left their last lawn care company. Those are some of the repeated ways, and those are some of the sort of odd ways or things that I found over the years where I've lost a customer that wasn't due to mow or to them moving and stuff like that. And then on the flip side, I get on that note, I've had quite a few times where a customer has moved and they weren't moving out of town but moving across town, and asking me if I could service them now in that other part of the city. And it's just too far for me, so I've turned them down. So I think of that too and go, I'm doing something right. If, I'm mowing this customer's lawn and they're so happy with me, but they're moving over there and they want me to drive all the way over there now. And the same thing, with my brother-in-law has experienced that too. I remember him telling me he had a client here in the city where he was working and doing for years, and they moved to a different town that's about an hour and a half drive away, and called him to see if he would go there, not to mow the lawn, because they obviously, on a weekly basis, they understood that wouldn't be efficient or would be cost effective, but asked if he could do all the trees and shrubs and stuff because they loved the work that he did here. And figured, if he can go out there once a year to do all this stuff. And I think he did. Yeah, I think he ended up doing, because he explained to them, well, it's going to cost you for me to drive out there and stuff. And they're like, that's fine, but we know you're going to do a really good job. And so he ended up driving the hour and stuff to go prune and trim all the shrubs and trees and stuff on this new property that they had bought in. So, I sort of think about those sort of things too when you lose a customer and sort of weigh it. Is it something that I'm doing? If you start losing a whole bunch of customers like I did last season, you got to think of, okay, what's the issue? With me, it was the fact that those real estate prices were popping up and, the customers were just cashing in on the fact that their real estate prices were thing. They all loved me. One of them even asked me if I would help them move, because the moving company wouldn't take their live potted plants and stuff that they had, and wouldn't also take their cases of wine that they had, because it was too fragile or something like that, and was wondering if I would take my truck and trailer to take their potted plants and their cases of wine, a 4-hour drive to their new place. So obviously, you look at those things and go, okay, am I losing customers? Are they still happy with me? What's the situation with these? Is it because they're moving, or is it because of other situations. And if it's because of other situations, if somebody says because you always leave a mess or you don't do a good job, is this a theme that's repeated with other customers that are firing you? Or is it a one-time occurrence? Is it you didn't show up and you billed us for it, even though you're like, yeah, I was there and I even talked to you on that day and I left the grass out there. And there's obviously something going on with this person's memory or, brain functions or something like that make you go, okay, you know what? There's some people you just can't please. And, it's just best to move on. So hopefully that answers that listener's question there on Instagram. Thank you very much for sending that in. If you guys would like or have any suggestions for the show, have any topics that you want me to talk about like this, I'd really appreciate it. And just like I mentioned, there's some times where I think of something or triggered something. I'm, thinking of these topics and, there's stuff that I, in my mind, I think I've covered everything over the past 2 years that I've ever, wanted to talk about with you guys. But when you guys send in a question or comment, you guys are the ones listening to it. A lot of you guys are new in the industry, and there's things that you're thinking of that I may not be thinking of, that I haven't covered yet. So if you guys have those suggestions, you can, obviously send them in. I'd really appreciate that. All right. So that's it for this week. Here's to wishing you guys all overwhelming success and freedom in your lawn care business. Bye for now.